You have played the good son, the good daughter, the good father who never says no. Somewhere in that performance, a question keeps knocking and you keep answering the door for someone else. Is being needed the same thing as being free? You built a life around being the one who holds it together, the fixer, the provider, the peacemaker at every holiday table. Tonight we ask what that role has cost you and what it would take to set it down. In 2026, the family group chat never sleeps. Photos land before the moment finishes happening. The birthday cake, the beach trip, the report card held up like a trophy. Somewhere between the phone and the child, the actual living gets replaced by the proof that it happened. You stop asking if you were present. You only ask if it looked like you were. Call it the comfortable cage. The house big enough for everyone to have a room to hide in. The vacations timed to the school calendar, the savings account named after someone else's future. None of it is wrong to want. But somewhere along the way, comfort started paying the bills for a life you never chose. It only agreed to. You built the cage yourself, out of love. That does not make it less of a cage. Somewhere in your family you carry a title, the reliable one, the strong one, the one who always shows up no matter what it costs. Everyone praises the title. No one asks who is left standing under it once the room empties out. And lately, when you try to answer that question yourself, you notice how long the silence runs before anything answers back. A role rewards you for performing it well. It says nothing about who you are when no one is watching, when there is no holiday to host and no crisis to manage. Epictetus told his students to remember they are only playing a part handed to them, a short one, a long one, the part of a beggar or a king. The performance was never meant to become the performer. Play the part well, he said. That was the whole instruction. Not which part you were handed, not how long you would hold it, not whether it paid well or cost you sleep. Just the playing of it honestly, without confusing the costume for the skin underneath. Because the costume can be taken off, and something has to still be standing there when it is. Ask yourself what happens to the title when the audience leaves, when the kids move out, when the relatives stop calling to ask for help. If the answer feels like nothing, like you go quiet along with the room, that is not humility. That is a self that got rented out for so long it forgot it still owned the lease. This is the cost no one lists on the family budget. Not the vacations, not the tuition, not the mortgage payment due on the first of the month. The cost is quieter than that, and it never shows up on a statement. It is the years spent being useful before you ever got around to being known. Usefulness, unlike love, always has an expiration date. Somewhere in every family there is an old unspoken story about repayment, that this sacrifice today buys back something tomorrow, some kind of return on all those years. Nobody signed a contract for it. Nobody read the fine print out loud, because there was no fine print, only faith. It was assumed, the way weather is assumed, right up until the year it doesn't come. Every family runs on an unwritten ledger. Who calls first? Who remembers the birthday? Who drives 3 hours on a Sunday without being asked twice? Nobody wrote these rules down and nobody voted on them, yet somehow you always seem to be the one who reads the update the moment it changes. And everyone else finds out later, if at all. Call it the family algorithm. It rewards you for showing up and never explains why the reward keeps shrinking. Skip a gathering and the silence lasts for weeks. Attend 20 in a row and no one remembers to mention it. You keep feeding data into a system that was never built to feed anything back, and somewhere you stop noticing you were still feeding it. Loyalty that only runs in one direction is not loyalty. It is only a toll, and you have been paying it for years. You tell yourself, this is temporary. The late nights covering for a sick parent, the years put on hold for a child who needs you more than you need anything for yourself. All of it backed by a promise that someday the ledger evens out. Someday they will be there for you, the way you were there for them. Seneca warned his friend Paulinus about people who live as if they had a second life waiting in reserve. They spend the only one they have on a future that keeps getting pushed back. He was not writing about family duty, but the warning fits it exactly. The years you are spending on the promise were never guaranteed to be repaid. People move. People change their minds. People get sick and forget who took care of them, or grow up and decide the debt was never real in the first place. Circumstances shift in ways no one can lock into place. You cannot audit a promise the way you audit a paycheck. You can only notice, year by year, whether it is still being kept. Then there is the performance for everyone watching from outside. The holiday photo where nobody is actually looking at each other. The phrase "we are so close" repeated at every gathering like a spell that might make it true if said enough times. Curating the family for an audience takes its own kind of energy, and that energy has to come from somewhere. It comes from you. The smoothing over, the translating between two relatives who will not speak directly, the laugh you produce on command at dinner because someone needs the room to feel lighter. Nobody assigns this job. Nobody thanks you for doing it well. By the time the real conversation might have started, you have nothing left in you to bring to it. None of this makes the love fake. It makes the accounting exhausting. And exhaustion, if you let it run long enough, starts to look a lot like the only relationship you have left with your own family is the invoice. Paid on time, every time, by the one person who never learned how to send one back. Marcus Aurelius kept a private notebook while running an empire that was, by most accounts, a family business with soldiers attached. He was surrounded by flattery, by relatives angling for position, by people who needed something from him at every hour. He called the place he retreated to inside himself the inner citadel. Nobody could enter it without his permission, not even blood. You already know what a guilt trip sounds like in your own family. The sigh on the phone. The comment about how little you visit, dropped right as you are walking out the door. The comparison to a cousin who calls more, delivered like an accident. None of it is really about the visit. It is a key, tested against the citadel's lock, to see if it still opens. The citadel is not coldness. It is the one room in you nobody gets to redecorate without asking. Long before Marcus wrote his notebook, Epictetus gave his students a simpler tool. Some things are up to us. Our judgments, our choices, our own character. Everything else, other people's opinions, their choices, whether they change, whether they ever say thank you, is not. He taught this to a room of Roman students. It works just as well at a dinner table. Your child's choices are not up to you, even the ones you paid for. Your spouse's mood is not up to you, even the ones you tried to manage from the next room. What is up to you is smaller and, most days, harder. It is whether you show up with your character intact, or whether you let someone else's weather decide what kind of day you are going to have. This does not mean you stop caring what happens to them. It means you stop mistaking their outcomes for your own job performance review. The modern family runs through a phone now, the group chat that buzzes during dinner, the read receipt that gets analyzed like a diagnosis, the photo you have to comment on within the hour or risk being asked if everything is okay. Your attention gets pulled toward the family the way a current pulls toward a drain, constant, quiet, and impossible to notice until you are already circling it. Reclaiming your attention does not mean loving them less, and it is not selfishness dressed up in philosophy. It means deciding on purpose which hours belong to the group chat. It means deciding which hours belong to the parts of you that have nothing to do with being anyone's daughter, son, or keeper. The citadel needs maintenance like anything else. It falls apart under enough scrolling. Marcus never left the empire. He never stopped answering to family, to senators, to the endless demands of being needed by everyone at once. What he built instead was not an escape, but a door inside himself. One that opened and closed on his own terms, not on the terms of whoever knocked loudest or longest. There is a script that runs every holiday season, the same way an engine turns over the same cylinders every time you start the car. Who is hosting? Who is not speaking to whom this year? Whether you will be asked again when you are finally going to settle down, have another child, take the promotion your father never got. You know the script before anyone opens their mouth. Most of your energy at these gatherings gets spent before you arrive, rehearsing answers, deciding which questions you will deflect and which ones you will simply absorb, because fighting them costs more than swallowing them. By the time you walk through the door, you have already run a small war in your head and called it getting ready. Marcus Aurelius wrote himself a note before most mornings began. Today I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, and dishonest, he told himself. None of it will catch me off guard because I have already seen it clearly. He was not preparing for enemies. He was preparing for his own relatives and colleagues, the ordinary difficulty of ordinary people. He was not bracing for a fight. He was refusing to be surprised by one. A boundary in a family does not sound like a slammed door. It sounds smaller and harder to say out loud. I am not available to discuss this tonight. I will call you back once I have had dinner. That topic is closed for today. It costs something the first few times, because the family is used to a version of you with no locks on any door. Your mother-in-law does not stop asking because you are patient enough to outlast the question. Your grown child does not stop calling at midnight because you always pick up. The overreach continues exactly as long as it keeps working, and it keeps working exactly as long as you keep absorbing it without saying anything back. Somewhere in the middle of raising children or caring for aging parents, a version of you existed before any of it started. It had interests that had nothing to do with anyone else's needs. Most people cannot remember the last time they did something purely because it was theirs. Not useful to the household, not educational for the kids, just theirs. That version of you is not gone. It is just underused, like a room in the house nobody walks into anymore because it is easier to keep the door closed than to explain why it is empty. Opening it again does not require permission from anyone at that dinner table, and it does not require an announcement either. The cycle breaks in small places, a boundary held once, a morning met without surprise instead of dread. A closed door opened again just to see what is still inside after all these years. None of it looks like freedom yet. It looks like maintenance. Freedom, it turns out, is what maintenance eventually becomes if you keep doing it long enough. Redefine what success in a family actually looks like. Not the size of the gathering you can host. Not the debt you absorbed for someone else's tuition, not your reputation as the one who never says no. Success is being able to walk out of a dynamic that asks you to trade your integrity for peace and still call yourself loving on the way out. Walking away from a demand is not the same as walking away from a person. You can love your father and still refuse to fund his choices. You can love your sister and still decline to referee a war between her and your mother for the 40th time. Distance, used correctly, is not betrayal. It is often the only honest thing left to offer. You are allowed to stay in the family and leave the role behind, both at once. Survival mode in a family looks like saying yes before the sentence finishes, showing up out of dread instead of desire, giving because refusing feels more dangerous than depleting yourself. Intentional contribution looks different. It starts with a question. Survival never had time to ask, what do I actually want to give here? And what am I only giving because I am afraid of what happens if I stop? The shift rarely announces itself. It shows up as a pause before agreeing to host again. A phone call returned the next day instead of the same hour. A gift given because you wanted to give it, not because the calendar told you it was owed. Small enough that no one else notices. Large enough that you do. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself more than once that he could walk out of life at any moment. He did not write it to frighten himself. He wrote it to sharpen his attention. So that whatever he did with the people in front of him, he did without the excuse of unlimited time. The same reminder works on a family that has quietly worn you down for years. You do not get to redo this decade. You only get to decide what you do with what is left of it. So is being the good one worth the shackles? Not the love. The love was never the problem. The shackles are the parts you kept wearing long after the reasons stopped making sense, the performance, the ledger, the guilt disguised as devotion. Those you were always allowed to set down. Nobody was ever going to hand you permission. You were always going to have to take it. Tonight, before you close this out and go back to the group chat, take an honest inventory. Which parts of your family life are love freely given? Which parts are a costume you have been wearing so long you forgot you could take it off? The audit does not have to happen all at once. It only has to happen. None of us gets to keep every version of ourselves that our family needed along the way. The provider, the peacekeeper, the good one who never said no, they served their purpose in a season that is allowed to end. Letting a role go is not abandoning the people who loved you inside it. It finally shows them what the role never could, who was underneath it the whole time. If someone in your life is still climbing that ladder tonight, still performing the good one, still mistaking being needed for being free, this was written for them too. You do not have to explain why you are sending it. Just send it. Not as an answer, not as a diagnosis, just as a place to start. You will not get these years back, in this family or in this body, no matter how carefully you spend them. That is not a threat, and it is not meant to rush you. It is the one fact honest enough to make the shackles worth naming, and light enough, finally, to let you set them down.